I have lived in more than 5 states, yes.
So you've taught in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Texas, and Florida.
The child has to have a disability that adversely affects them and their educational performance. And the child must need educational and related services to be successful in the classroom and in general life.
So the National Education Association recently came out with an article talking about the crisis of unsafe behavior in schools.
I mean, I feel like if we don't laugh, sometimes we're going to cry as special education teachers. Like, that's how we get through so many things. So it's okay to laugh because sometimes there's just nothing else to do.
I personally know many teachers who have been bitten, kicked, or even punched while teaching, if not worse. Is there something that principals or districts can do to make teachers feel safer?
Oh my gosh, look how cute! It's precious! What is the dinosaur's name?
Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us, and I welcome you to our show. You may be wondering, right now I look a little bit weird because I'm hunched back over, but there's a very special reason of why I look ridiculous on camera right now. So I went on your Instagram, obviously, before, and I viewed all 2,000 plus posts, or 2,500.
Oh, goodness.
Took me quite some time to read all of your captions, but I understand that you are a Backstreet Boys fan. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so
a little scared right now, but
I added the Backstreet Boys merch to my collection over here for this interview. So my first question to you is, do you have this?
I do not.
No? Okay.
But that is next level. Like, I am super impressed.
So I'm a huge fan of so I'm not a huge fan of Backstreet Boys. I love them, but I don't have too much exposure to them. But I do love music in general, and so I love attending concerts. So I know you've been to at least one Backstreet Boys concert. Is that?
Have been to many. Yes.
Okay. When you mean many, how many are we talking?
Oh my gosh. My first Backstreet Boy concert was when I was in 6th grade.
Wow.
So I think that I've been to, at least 6 or 7 or 8, maybe more than that, but I also love going to concerts too, so I have probably lost count at this point. Yeah.
Okay, that's incredible. So just like how your favorite band, or one of your favorite bands, is the Backstreet Boys, you may not be familiar with this band, but my favorite band is Muse. So they're an alternative rock band.
Yeah.
I love attending their concerts as well. In fact, next month I'm flying down to various states, and I'm going to 4 of their same concerts in the same month, and within a 30-day duration. So I do share your love and appreciation for music and concerts as well. So enough about that. Let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about your story, because you have a very interesting story. The first thing that caught my attention was you've in fact taught at 5 different states. So have you lived in 5 different states, or is it more than that?
I have lived in more than 5 states. Yes.
That's really cool. Okay, can you share your experience? First, so you've taught in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Texas, and Florida as a teacher. So my question to you is, what was your experience like teaching in those many different states?
It's so different state to state. So I am from Pennsylvania. My first year, I graduated in Pennsylvania from Kutztown University with my bachelor's degree. And then my first year of teaching, it's really hard in Pennsylvania to get a teaching job. So I got a job in Virginia, and I taught in Northern Virginia for a year. Then my boyfriend at the time, but now husband, we got engaged. So I moved back to Philadelphia, and I taught in Philly for a while. Then I also taught in Delaware. We also lived in Maryland while I taught in Delaware. And then his job is what moves us around. He works in the trucking industry.
Okay.
So they moved us to Texas, and then they moved us to Georgia. And then we finally decided we're just going to move to Florida because it's where we wanted to be. It's where we got married. So I have taught in all of the states. I was certified also to teach in Georgia. I did not teach in a classroom in Georgia, and I am certified to teach here in Florida, but I have not taught in an actual classroom, like the traditional classroom setting here in Florida. But it's very different state to state, all of the things. And Texas is its own animal too. That was a really fun one to learn. But I love teaching in Texas. That was awesome.
Okay, that's incredible. And so you said you lived in Pennsylvania. Were you close to like Philadelphia or the city in Philly, or a little bit out of that?
So my husband is from Philly, so we lived in outside of Philadelphia for a while, and I taught in Chester, Pennsylvania. So if anyone knows where that is, that's right outside of Philly. But I am from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is north central Pennsylvania. So if you've ever heard of Little League World Series, that was actually like my first job. I used to sell Dairy Queen dilly bars on the big hill, and I made 10 cents a dilly bar, which is really fun. So.
So because you have all these experiences living in different states, I have to ask you, because I love food, and I think a lot of people also resonate with food as well. I have to say, out of those states, which place would, say, hey, like this state or this particular area has some amazing food? Because I just went to Philadelphia over the weekend. I've been there a couple of but every time I go there, I have to try, the famous cheesesteaks from like Pat's and Geno's. And I know there's so...
No, don't go to Pat's and Geno's.
Okay, so where do I have to go? I tried Pat's Saturday, just this Saturday.
Was it good?
It was great. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
So I can't just choose like who has the best food. It's really hard because Pennsylvania is like the snack state of the United States, right? Like all of the really good snacks come from Pennsylvania. And then you have Philly cheesesteaks, you have Philly soft pretzels, and you just so many good foods are. That is the one thing that we miss about home, Pennsylvania. All of our family still lives in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So when we go home to Pennsylvania, we will fly in and we're like, okay, but we need to make a pit stop to get a cheesesteak because it's not the same in any other state. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's not the same. So you've not yet tried Tony Luke's cheesesteaks.
Okay, I did.
Gosh. Okay.
Maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I've been to Philly several times, and each time it's a different place. So I did go to Tony Luke's. I have to retry it again because honestly, I did forget. I did forget the taste of it and the experience just last weekend.
They're really good. So Tony Luke's is probably one of my favorites. They have the cheese whiz or like the cheese fries, which is the good side to having a cheesesteak. But then you also have to try, and it's not in Philadelphia. It's in, I forget what town it's in, but it's called DeLussey's. It's this little hole in the wall, but it's so good. So good.
Okay.
But then for Tex-Mex, like if you ever want good Texas, oh my gosh, never had better Mexican Tex-Mex than Liberty, Texas. Like, whoo, so good. So it just depends. Every state kind of has their own thing, but man, Philly cheesesteaks are hard to beat.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm going to, I am traveling down to Texas in February, on February 28th. So I will make sure some good recommendations from you because, why not? Do love, you said Mexican food, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, Tex-Mex is so good.
I don't think I've ever had, which sounds kind of really bad to say. Because I'm from New York City, and I feel like we'll have we live in New York City, so I feel like in New York City there's everything here. I don't think I've ever tried Tex-Mex.
It's all like you will never have Mexican food the same again once you have Tex-Mex. Like it will change your life for real.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hold you to that. So I want to go ahead and introduce you now. So obviously you are the teacher behind the brand Mrs. D's Corner and for the intentional IEP. So given your extensive knowledge and experience in special education, you ultimately help other teachers create more effective and efficient IEP plans. So not everyone in our audience is familiar with what an IEP is. We've interviewed one other special education teacher, which we had the privilege to, and it was amazing. And I've got the chance to learn a lot more about this topic. Most of our audiences are either teachers, but not special education teachers, and of course, parents. So I want to ask you, it sounds like a very basic question to you, but I want to ask you, what exactly is an IEP?
So an IEP is an Individualized Education Program, and it is for students who qualify for special education services under the federal law, that is IDEA, so the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is a lot of big words.
So, and to my understanding is every student that's in special education needs an IEP plan, their own individualized learning plan.
Correct. So they have to go through the eligibility process to become eligible to have an IEP. So you can go through the eligibility process and do the testing and evaluations and be found not eligible. But once you are found eligible, that is when you can begin receiving services.
Got it. And can you briefly explain what the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan is? And is there a difference? Because I see those two words get thrown around a lot in special education. So I just want to clarify and learn from an expert.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference between 504s and IEPs. So IEPs, again, are covered under federal law under the IDEA. 504 plans are something separate, and they are covered under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which, if you want to Google it, go ahead and do your homework there. But that's generally, it's a civil rights law that helps with discrimination against people who have disabilities. So the eligibility requirements for a 504 plan are very different from an IEP. An IEP has very specific eligibility requirements. So one requirement is that the child has to have a disability that adversely affects them and their educational performance. And the child must need educational and related services to be successful in the classroom and in general life. So for a 504 plan, it's much more loose and it's much broader. Basically, you just have to have a mental or physical impairment that limits one or more major life activities. And that could be anything. That could be walking, breathing, really anything that you just need help with. And you have to have a record of having such an impairment. So whether that is, through a doctor or the school has noticed such an impairment, but typically that comes from some type of outside evaluation where you have proof that your child has this impairment that they need help with. So those are the differences really. And when it comes to what an IEP is versus a 504 plan, an IEP is much more robust than what a 504 plan is going to be. So your IEP is going to have your annual goals. So they're going to set goals for your student that are specific to where they are. So IEPs meet a student where they are to help them get closer to where they need to be, where their same aged peers are performing. A 504 plan is just going to give the child accommodations and modifications. So an example of that, now IEPs will have accommodations, modifications too, but a 504, an example of an accommodation would be, extra time on a test or having the test read to you. And then modifications. So let me back up a second. Modifications are typically reserved for IEPs. Can they happen in a 504 plan? Sure. But generally a modification is when you're changing what the student is learning. So let's say that you have a student who's in 4th grade and they're currently reading on a kindergarten level. So you're taking that 4th grade reading content and modifying it to a kindergarten level so the child can read it and understand the content. That is a modification. That comes under an IEP. So that typically wouldn't be something that happens with a 504 plan. Okay. But again, it's very loose and depends on the student and all of that. So that was a lot of information too, but that's generally the difference.
That was very good information. And of course, there are several people that are included in the development or the creation of a successful IEP plan, correct?
Yes, there are multiple people. So when it comes to IEPs, you have an IEP team. So who is on the IEP team at a minimum needs to be the parent or the caregiver. You have to have the student at a certain age when they become of transition age. And according to the law, that's age 16. But in Florida, that's age 12. So it depends on what state. The state can make the age younger if they see fit. So at transition age, students need to be invited to their IEPs. However, I think you can involve them at any age. So don't just think, transition age, oh my gosh, now it's time to involve them. They should know about their IEP before they're 12 or 16,
right.
So you have the parent, the caregiver, you have the child, you have the special education teacher, you have a general education teacher, you have an administrator who typically serves as they are basically the liaison for the district. They are the one who can give you, say, here are the services that we have available, or here's the curriculum. They have to know the general education curriculum and what and how the district can spend their special education money. So that person also needs to be on the team as well. And then you can have other people on the team. So you have your related services, so your speech, your occupational therapy, physical therapy, those people can be on the team as well. And then, from the parent side, sometimes you have advocates come in and they're lawyers, which is no fun, but that's a whole other avenue we don't need to go down right now.
No, okay. So there's a lot of people and individuals involved in this, which is really interesting, very interesting stuff. So let me transition now. I want to talk about an important topic. We're still staying on topic, but something that's relevant across all industries is data collection, right? That's with any industry, and data collection is super important. So when we talk about the IEP process, data collection, of course, helps the IEP team make informed decisions around the child's learning experience. So some of the data includes like attendance, behavior, and academics, and probably a lot more, call it micro data, that I'm probably not even aware of. But what I found, so of course, I've explored your website, and so I went ahead and I see that you sell, or you've created these like self-inking rubber stamps, which we're going to put, everyone can see it, and so they know exactly what I'm speaking about. Can you talk about this over here? So you have stamps on behavior, conduct, I see prompt level, and many other stamps. It looks very interesting. I'd love to get a more of a better understanding of how this is helping special education teachers.
Yeah, so when I taught in a self-contained setting, I had students who were in grades 1 through 4 who were in, it was called the life skills classroom. So these are students who were moderately disabled. So they were with me most of the day, but they would go out to the general education classroom. That's typically what a self-contained classroom looks like. Again, it varies state to state. This was in Texas. So when I was in a classroom, I noticed that a lot of my students needed a lot of prompting. They needed a lot of modeling. They needed a lot of assistance with completing tasks, or they needed additional accommodations like extra time. And it was just things that we did innately in the classroom without thinking of it like a second thought. It was like, oh, let's extra time. We're going to take an extra 5 minutes or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So I would send home these the students' work home to the family so they could see how their child was performing in the class and what they were doing, and just to keep them in the loop with what we're doing in the classroom. And what I noticed was, I would send home, let's just say, well, every morning we did this cut and paste activity for days of the week. So students every morning, they would do their morning work, and then we would come to the back table together and we would cut, and it would, as you're cutting, you're practicing fine motor. As you're gluing, you're practicing fine motor. So we were doing that activity, and we were also learning how to spell the days of the week, practicing what day of the week it was, and learning all of these skills. So we would sequence the days of the week, glue it on the paper, and we would send it home. And I noticed that one thing that was happening was, yes, it looked like, and it was true, that students could spell the name. There's a model, they could spell the day of the week. So today's Wednesday, they could spell Wednesday, put it in order, follow the model, send it home. And you would get to the IEP meeting or the parent-teacher conference, and I'd be like, well, we're still working on spelling XYZ, or we're still working on spelling the student's name. And we would do the same cut and paste activity for the student's name. And the parent would be like, and rightfully so, in their own, with the information they knew, they would think, well, Stephanie already did that all by herself. Like, you've been sending me home this work for weeks where it's correct. Right. And so I was like, well, but like, it is correct, but like, we also, that took 3 attempts to do that. And, we did 15 extra minutes to finish it on this day. And there was a lot of communication that wasn't happening on my end. So what I did was I created what I call communication stickers. And this was the birth, really, of these rubber stamps. And this is where it started. And I just created these stickers, and I printed them on Avery labels, and I would stick them on the back of a student's worksheet. So whatever it was, if a student needed extra time, we would stick extra time sticker on the back of the worksheet. If it was, the second time they were doing this activity, we would put that sticker on the back to let the parent know. And just like that, you come to the meetings now, and everyone's on the same page. And it was just this beautiful just collaboration then from there.
Right.
So I sell these communication stickers in my Teachers Pay Teacher shop and on my website. And in listening to other teachers, sometimes printing these stickers is a pain in the butt. If you put the sticker sheet in wrong, it prints wrong, and then you wasted a whole Avery label sheet. Like, it was just a mess. Right. So I started going down the route of figuring out how to turn these into rubber stamps. And so that is what you see today with the rubber stamps that are in our shop. They are a birth of the communication stickers to help teachers not only take data, because that's really important data we can use for the IEPs, but also to communicate with the families and let them know, this is how your student's performing in the class, or these are the prompts they needed, or here are the accommodations they got for this lesson. And it just keeps that communication open and really builds that rapport with the families that you're servicing. And it just makes the conversation so much easier when it comes to, annual IEP meeting time and parent-teacher conferences.
Wow. Okay. I love that. And I really enjoyed hearing the story about how this idea came about, originally from the stickers. But yeah, it is a great idea. And it helps a lot, right? Because now parents understand if this is a second-time activity, or if they've actually completed this activity, but they've taken 15, 20, 30 minutes longer than expected.
Right.
So it's really great, and it helps reduce the friction when a parent actually comes to these meetings. Wow, that is a very, very helpful thing. So I now want to transition over into, talking about some of the challenges of being a special education teacher. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's a very serious topic, actually, but I would even go far as to say that it is extremely challenging being a special education teacher and everything that comes with it. So first of all, I want to thank you for dedicating all of those years actively teaching. But now, of course, you help other teachers and you're doing really incredible things. But just being a special education teacher, people should really be more thankful for what they do, because it is not easy. So I want to talk about some of these challenges. What are a few things that you wished you knew before becoming a special education teacher?
Oh my goodness, so many things. Well, first, you can laugh, because I feel like if we don't laugh, sometimes we're going to cry as special education teachers. Like, that's how we get through so many things. So it's okay to laugh, because sometimes there's just nothing else to do. And that's kind of one thing, is just find, there's a little bit of humor in every day. It's okay to laugh. Yeah, there are some really serious things that go on in special education that we deal with as teachers and that families also deal with at home. But at the end of the day, like, we're there for the kids, and every day is a new day. And that is one thing that I really try to remind myself each day. Like, if the kid had a bad day yesterday, don't bring that into Wednesday. Don't bring that into Thursday. Don't bring that into next week. It's a new day. Start over, start fresh. That's one thing that really helped me thrive in the special education setting. But the other thing that I didn't learn until maybe 5 or 6 years in, maybe even, well, no, it was probably about 5 or 6 years in, was how to say no and set boundaries for my work-life balance. And that is a conversation that is just constantly in both, all just teaching community and in general, not just special education teachers. But as special ed teachers, we have to write IEPs. So a lot of us are writing IEPs at home on our time off, at home with our families and taking that time away. So the one thing that I really learned, and it took me a really long time and it was a really hard lesson to learn, was saying no to things so that I could say yes to other things. Like, so I had to learn that I was more than just a teacher. Like, I'm also Stephanie, I'm also a wife. I'm also just a person, me as myself. I'm a sibling, I'm a daughter. I'm all of these other things outside of who I am as a teacher, that I have to be that person too. And I also learned that, it's so cliche, I feel like, to say you can't pour from an empty cup. But at the same time, you can't service your students well if you're not taking care of yourself first. Like, if you're sick and you're ill, you're going to go to the doctor and get help, right? You can't take care of your own children at home, because then they're going to get sick. Like, kids can tell, kids know when you're unhappy. Right. So it's just really important to make sure that you can take your mental health sick days. Like, use your sick days. That's also another really important one. Use your sick days for mental health days. That's really important. So just figure out what your boundaries are, and everyone's boundaries are different. There's no one right or wrong way to do that, or there's not like one boundary that everyone should have as a teacher. It really depends on you. So just kind of look inside of yourself and who you are as a person outside of teacher you, and what do you need to thrive as a teacher, and really just set those boundaries. Like, you don't need to do all of the clubs at school, and you don't need to stay 3 hours after school every day. There's different things that you can do to help you succeed in the classroom without giving up every ounce of your human life to the classroom. So that's the biggest.
That's some really good advice. And I do want to share some actual data over here just to show the seriousness of this topic, of what some of the special education teachers or teachers in general go through, but more specifically a lot to do with special education teachers. So the National Education Association recently came out with an article talking about the crisis of unsafe behavior in schools. Especially now, as we've gotten out of the pandemic, we see a lot more incidents like this. I personally know many teachers who have been bitten, kicked, or even punched while teaching, if not worse. I mean, those are like the standards, and it's okay. You go home, you talk about it, And so there was a survey conducted with 15,000. Okay, that's a pretty decent sample size. 15,000 K to 12 teachers and administrators. A staggering 22% reported being physically assaulted by a student. To make matters worse, 42% of administrators admitted that they've been harassed or threatened by a parent. And a lot of people don't realize this. It's not just the students that have to deal with. Teachers have to deal with parents. In many schools, right? Some schools are great. They set hard boundaries, especially in private schools where parents have limited interaction with their teachers. And so I've heard great stories about that. But then I hear all these other stories like, hey, it's just not dealing with kids. It's dealing with parents. And now parents are no longer supportive or understanding or cooperative. They have the specific point of view, and they, all kinds of situations over here. So I was going to ask you what advice can you give to new teachers on this complex issue, but you've already given several answers to that question. And I think it's a great theme that we see over here, which is learn to say no. Think about your work-life balance. And if you say yes to everything, you cannot say yes to the things you really like or areas where you can really help and excel. So I think it's a very important topic. It's a very important solution that we all need to try to do, is learning to say no, not just in special education, but in everywhere, right? You could be working for a startup, or you could be working for a Fortune 500 company. It does not matter, but we really need to learn what our barriers are, as you just said. And this way, we need to be happy in life also, right? We can't let work stress us out all the time. And I'm a huge proponent of as soon as you leave the work building, to turn off your email notifications from your phone. I just go right into settings, turn it off, and doesn't matter if you have 10 different emails, let's say emergency, you're not going to get it. And let's be real, there is no emergency via an email, okay? So I really need to start practicing that, and not just, oh, it's 8 p.m. Let me just check my work email real quick. Oh no, I got an urgent email from my principal. Let me email her back now at 9 p.m. I do want to go ahead and talk. I have one more follow-up on regards to this topic. So obviously we're talking about the crisis that's going on. Is there something that principals or districts can do to make teachers feel safer? I know it's a silly question, right? Because it's very hard to see change in this industry. But in your opinion, is there something that could be done either at the administrator level, so like the principals of the school buildings, or at the district level, that would make teachers just feel more supported with this current crisis?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things that could be done to be changed to make teachers and special education teachers feel more supported. Because we, as special education teachers, like you said, like we work a lot closer with the parents of the students that we work with than the general education teachers do. Because, we have IEPs and we have to report to them directly. And a lot of times, depending on the classroom setting you're in, you're talking to that parent every single day. So one thing, and I have found this to be true, and I have worked in schools where admin was so supportive, and I have also worked in schools where admin wasn't supportive. As long as I was quiet in my classroom, they left me alone, and that was good. But the one thing that I know as a special education teacher would help just everyone is to just support your special education teachers. And I know that's such a loaded thing to say, because that looks so different to everyone, but take us serious. If we're saying there's a behavior issue, don't just send the kid back with a lollipop or a box of Legos. And don't, if we're saying so-and-so said XYZ, don't just blow it off. I know administrators have so much to do, and they deal with so many things that, teachers don't deal with. But at the same time, if your teachers aren't happy, it's going to show, and you're going to have a lot more problems than if you just supported your teachers. And that can look so many different ways. But just listening to us and taking I'm just listening. I mean, that's really it. Just listening to us and trying to help us solve problems instead of putting Band-Aids on volcanoes, as seems to be done.
Right. No, awesome. So now let's move on to a slightly more happier topic. I do know that you, or I don't know, maybe you no longer love them, but I know you're a huge fan of dinosaurs. Is that correct?
Yes. Do you see? I have this dinosaur here.
I did not.
That's a Jurassic Park Jeep here. So yes, love me some dinosaurs.
So this was many years ago. You put a caption out stating, I don't know if you remember writing this, but you did state that you wish there was a dinosaur emoji or more dinosaur emojis that you can use so you can use while, posting, and
Yes.
writing things out. So you may not know this, but one of our main, we have over 100 workbooks. Our materials are used by over 1 million students nationwide. But one of the main characters in our workbooks is a dinosaur. So I had our design team, and you don't have to tell me if you hate it. I'll make sure that they redesign it and tweak it for your needs. I'm going to make sure that it's converted to an emoji so you can use it if you would like to. I'll share it with you.
Oh my gosh, look how cute it is. It's precious. What is the dinosaur's name? Like, does he have a name in the works?
That is a great question. What is it? It sounds really silly. It's just Argo the Dino. Obviously, we're Argo.
Okay.
So it's not, I don't think it's the name. The name is yet to come in the future. We get asked this all the time, but for simplicity's purposes, because we have not given it a well out proper name yet, it's just now Argo the Dino, which is a cop out.
Oh my gosh.
But in the near future, when we have like physical versions of these toys, we'll go ahead and make sure to give this character a name.
That's awesome. He's so cute. I love it.
So I know you are a huge mental health advocate. You have a personal story that is so powerful and important because many teachers experience various degrees of mental health related issues, but rarely ever speak about it, or worse, even seek out help. So all of your followers know that you were diagnosed with severe anxiety many years ago. You've posted many helpful resources over the years on your feed. One thing that caught my attention right away was your post on cognitive behavioral therapy, otherwise known as CBT. Can you talk to us more about CBT and how it's helped your anxiety? And of course, I want to preface both by having this conversation. This is not actual advice or anything like that. We're just learning your experience. I'm a huge proponent of CBT. I've heard a lot about it. I just wanted to learn about this experience and how it's really helped you.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with severe anxiety back in the late 2016, early 2017, and it's actually the reason that I left the traditional classroom setting. So I went through years and years of therapy, and I cannot recommend therapy enough. When someone's like, "Oh, I'm struggling with anxiety," I'm like, "Go to therapy." Like, it changed my life. It made me the person that I am today and helped me get where I am today with my own personal journey. So my therapist used cognitive behavior therapy with me. And basically what you do with cognitive behavior therapy is and it's going to sound really funny. So if you don't have a mental illness, hearing someone say, "I have voices in my head," you're going to be like, "Man, this girl's crazy." Like, I'm very fully aware how crazy I am. It's fine. But I have another voice inside of my head. It is my anxiety voice. And I gave her a name, and her name is Dolores, after Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter.
Right.
So, backstory. Moving forward, I have my own voice, Stephanie's voice inside of my head. I also have Dolores's voice when it comes to certain things with anxiety. So, what I do and how cognitive behavior therapy works is on a piece of paper, and I have a notebook that is just strictly for my CBT stuff. And I will write down whatever it is my anxiety voice is telling me. So one of the big things that my anxiety voice always told me after leaving the traditional classroom setting was, "I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher because I'm not in the classroom." And so that was really hard for me to tell myself because I am a teacher. I have a degree. That was my identity, was so wrapped around being a teacher that it was really, really hard for me. So what cognitive behavior, you write down what your anxiety is telling you. And then on the other side of that paper, so essentially you want to put your paper down in half, or you can write it across. And then I like to take another piece of another colored pen or pencil and write underneath, you write the truth. So my anxiety is telling me that I'm not a teacher because I'm not in the classroom. The truth behind that is I am a teacher because I've got a degree in teaching. I also have 4 or 5 different states telling me that I can teach in their states because I have my certifications. I also know that you don't have to be in a physical classroom to be a teacher because COVID taught us that. You have virtual teaching. There are virtual schools. You have homeschool teachers. What about college professors? They're also teachers, but they maybe don't have their own specific classroom. It's just a stadium or whatever it may be, right? So teaching looks very different, and that is what helped me move through my anxiety. So then when you have that written down, and in the next moment where you're thinking, "I'm not a teacher, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a teacher," you come back and in your mind, or you come back and look at your notebook and you say, "Oh, but I am a teacher because I have a degree in teaching." And you reread those truths over to yourself. And over time, once you do this hundreds and hundreds of times, it's not like an instant thing. Your brain, as soon as you think, I'm not a teacher, you're like, oh, but I am, because I have all of these truths.
Right.
And so it's just helping reframe your mind away from the negative things that your anxiety is telling you and telling you more of the truth. So now when people tell me you're not a teacher because you're not in the classroom, I'm like, that's cool that you think that, because I know that I'm a teacher. So that no longer triggers my anxiety anymore because I've done cognitive behavior therapy. But that's my personal journey with it.
Right. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate it. And I know you're also a huge fan of like self-help books, reading materials. So because of that, I do want to ask you, like, you don't have to name 3, but like, what are your top 1, 2, or 3 like self-help books that you would recommend others to read?
One of them has a bad word on the front, but it's they block it out because you can buy it at Target. But I'm the type of person who, like, when you think about going to the gym, I need somebody who's going to yell at me, like boot camp yell at me, to get it ingrained into my brain. So it was very helpful for me. I understand that it's not the same for everyone else, but this book was a very good book for me that helped me move through my anxiety and just me personally. That was a really good one. I'm not going to say it because it has a bad word on it, but it's by Mark Manson. There's also that's the second book. There's actually an orange book that was really good, but I like this one a lot more. You can say I have it all tabbed and like.
Okay, yeah.
I write in my books and I will highlight things that resonate with me. So if I ever want to go back and read it, I can just read those parts. And then this is another one that was really helpful. It's called Forgiving What You Can't Forget by Lisa Turkerst. Probably just butchered her last name, but again, with all the different tabs and things in here. This one really helped me move through, losing friends when I left the classroom and just all of the pain that came with the guilt of leaving the traditional classroom setting and moving into where I am now. That really helped me with all of that. And then in terms of just the teacher world, because I am and always will be a teacher, like an educator, like it is just who I am as a person. This book by Gabby Stroud, it's called Teacher. Absolutely amazing. It is about her own personal journey as a teacher. It was absolutely fantastic. I felt very seen when I read it, but she's speaking from her own experiences. And so it just made me feel like, wow, like that really does happen in other classrooms. And, it's not just me. Like, I'm not crazy for this just happening to me. Like, it's happening everywhere. And then I love reading quotes and poetry. So Taylor Mawley's What Teachers Make, there's a very popular YouTube video he has out there that has millions and millions of views of him just reading this poem. And this book was written I'm pretty sure this book was written after that poem about just being a teacher. And so I always recommend this book to teachers. If you ever feel like your teacher soul and your teacher fire needs relit, like this is the book to read. So if I'm ever thinking like, oh man, education, I'm like, I need to read this book again, because you read it and you're like, yes, like this is why I do what I do. So these are my 4 books that are really, really helped me through everything.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. But let me thank you again, because you've done a fantastic job. You've actually explained the reasoning behind each and every book. And I think that helps a lot of people who will be watching this video. So obviously we're going to have these books linked with a title and author name. But thank you so much for providing that context. And these are my 4 recommended books. Go and read it without any kind of context. I certainly do appreciate that. And I'm going to, of course, make sure I select one of those books as well. So it's interesting. I'm not going to read it, but I will download like the audio version of it. I'm a very auditory learner. If you give me a textbook or anything like that, of course I can process it, but I'm just a much more advanced visual and auditory learner. So I just use that. So I don't typically read books, but I do listen, watch a video, and that's how I usually consume the knowledge, let's put it that way. So at first glance, your profile screams veteran of special education and an IEP expert. However, as I personally looked more into your website, I myself would currently describe you as an entrepreneur. So I know many teachers are on the TPT platform. TPT stands for Teachers Pay Teachers, where they upload and sell various educational resources. Fantastic job. I really like what TPT's done. However, you've taken it above and beyond, and that's why I use the word entrepreneur. You have your own website, which contains
Yes.
your own e-commerce section. I believe you're running on Shopify still. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so customers can buy directly from your website, and I know I've taken a lot of interest in that because we're a publishing and technology company. We have engineers in house. We're a team of 40, and so when I take a look at we talk to many amazing teachers. Yours is the first one I've come across. So I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? You have a lot of things going on. You have your own e-commerce section. You even have subscription-based model for something called the Adapted Book Club and the Intentional IEP, right? The Intentional IEP is a subscription model, right?
Yes.
Or you offer, okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, you have some serious things going on over here. Can you talk a little bit about how you're managing these businesses? Do you have employees? I'd love to just learn more about it because it's typically like, hey, I'm a teacher, I sell on TPT, or hey, I'm a teacher, I make a lot of money on TPT. That's fantastic, but I wouldn't use the word entrepreneur. You've gone above and beyond, and I'm really impressed.
Well, thank you, first of all, for noticing and saying that. That's the first time anybody's ever called me an entrepreneur outside of being a teacher. So I started doing Teachers Pay Teachers December 2011 because I couldn't find a teaching job after I got married, moved back to Pennsylvania. So I also did Teachers Pay Teachers while I worked full time until I left the traditional classroom setting. And then from there, because I was out of the traditional classroom setting, I had Teachers Pay Teachers and thankfully my husband's job and benefits and all of that to support us. While I decided what I wanted to do with my life after leaving the classroom. So I threw myself into growing my brand and Mrs. D's Corner. And, the intentional IEP came out of that, and I'm really proud of it. So I ran everything and did everything myself. So blog posts, emails, social media scheduling, creating products, building all of these things until the pandemic hit. And that was when I started hiring teachers part-time. They're called virtual assistants or VAs. And so I think currently I have 9 part-time VAs who work for me and do different things. And so we are a little team, but they help do things like answer emails. And then I have someone who also schedules emails that go out for the newsletters and schedule social media. And then I have people who help me with content creation in terms of bringing an idea that I have and bringing it to life in terms of what teachers see when they download a freebie or something like that. So I'm very much still in the business and hands-on with everything. But yeah, I have a couple of people who work for me, and it's awesome. I love my team and they do a great job, and they are all former teachers. So we are a team of teachers over here.
That's incredible. I love that. And I was reading, I think it was, no, actually I did not read. I know you've done many podcasts. I think I've put a couple of on. I was skipping around, and you talked about where you were running your business. This might have been recent, actually, and you were sick, right? I think it was like a trigger.
Yeah.
And you were on your bed or on your sofa for about a week, even 2 weeks. But you came back to see that your business was still thriving. It was fine. Sales were still coming in, right? That's correct.
Yep.
And
the world did not implode.
I want to commend you on that because I don't think people understand just how difficult it is to pass that threshold of where you build something where it can, at the very least, run without you for some period of time. Now, of course, the goal is, to create a business that can ultimately run without you for an extended period of time, call it several years. That's fantastic. It's very hard to do. But the fact that you've been able to even say, hey, I can perhaps in the future or near future, step away, take a vacation with my husband, go away for 2 weeks, and I know that the business is running. That is such a great feeling. Or if you don't feel that, please, I deeply, deeply and sincerely congratulate you because not many people are able to accomplish that. So what you've already accomplished is incredible. Absolutely. So I do want to go ahead and so talk about being a rock star entrepreneur. You recently signed a book deal. Is that correct?
I did. Yes, it is.
Now, very exciting. So I know you may not be able to share the exact details, but can you share some inside scoop on the book you're writing and how this experience has been?
Yeah. So last September, I think it was the end of September, I signed a book deal with a publishing company to bring an IEP book for teachers to the market. And I'm currently writing it. I submitted the first couple of chapters, I think a week and a half ago to the publisher for the editor. And basically it's going to be about how teachers how to write IEPs, because we're never really told how to do it. We kind of just figure it out over time and Google all of the things, whether it's right or wrong. So I use all of my experience from all the different states I've taught and all the different classroom settings I've taught and all of the knowledge. So I love reading special education law. Like, I'm a weirdo, and
That's awesome.
like, oh, yeah. And I know not many teachers do. So this book is me taking my knowledge of what I have learned through trainings and reading and just experience and sharing with teachers how to write IEPs more effectively and efficiently, but also in a more collaborative way where, the gen ed teacher is also a part of the conversation and a part of the team, truthfully, right? And then the family, the caregiver, the parent is also a part of that conversation in the whole process. So that is what the book is going to be about. It will be available January of 2024. I'm pretty sure there's going to be like a pre-order option. I don't know when that'll be available, but yeah, just follow me on social media. And as soon as I'm allowed to announce it, I'm going to share it because I'm terrible at keeping secrets and I'm excited about things. So
That's really exciting news. How many hours do you anticipate this entire project will take you?
Oh, man. So the first 2 chapters were the first chapter was like 6 or 7 or 8,000 words. And the other one was like 2. And that took me 3 days. So probably about a month.
Okay.
To write the whole book. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. No, that's very exciting because we have over 100+ workbooks published to date. It's not your traditional. It's these are workbooks, right? Math workbooks, science, social studies. When we first started out, it took us months. It took us maybe three to 4 months with a lot of different people on the team to create it. Not just the content, but then design and format and all this kind of stuff. And we weren't even optimized on our process. We were using various programs that you do not use these particular programs to create workbooks. So we've learned a lot across the last 9 years. Now, we churn out products really quickly. But it's always interesting learning about, other people's experiences in the publishing industry. It's something that people don't often talk about. So thank you so much for sharing that. So now those are all the questions that I have for you. However, I do have a very important last part of the segment over here. We're going to play a quick trivia, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Okay.
A little nervous.
Backstreet Boys. Yeah. How well do you know Backstreet Boys? Okay. And to be fair, let me preface this by saying I'm a huge Muse fan. I listen to their music every single day, probably several hours a day, but I would probably fail every trivia there know about them. So it's kind of like you can't really explain it. Like, I think I'm a huge fan, but you're not really an expert at all. You forget all the fine details. But let's go ahead and go over question number 1. So I think let's start off with question number 1. What is the name of the Backstreet Boys debut album?
I think wasn't it just a self-titled album? Was it just Backstreet Boys?
Yeah, you're correct.
You're great.
Okay, let's go on to question number 2. Who is the oldest member of the group?
Kevin.
Kevin. Okay, and can you do me a favor because I don't know where Kevin is on my shirt. Can you see my shirt?
It's a little fuzzy, but I think he's the one in the middle with the red sweat, like the red. No, go to, him. That's Kevin.
Okay. So Kevin is the oldest member of the. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot. And by the way, I did hear a couple. So while I was researching on you and trying to figure out who you are as a person, I had just Backstreet Boys tracks.
Yes.
Really, really good songs, actually. I know Backstreet Boys. It's the number 1 boy band. I think they still have like the number 1 amount of like CDs sold, like over 120 million. Everyone knows them. But thank you for the opportunity for me, for me listening to some tracks. Let's move on to question number 3. How many studio albums have the Backstreet Boys released?
Oh man. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna go with 10?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And you are a fan. So
It was a guess. I mean, it was an educated guess.
question number 4 is unfair. I really had
It's unfair.
I had to say, okay, you know what? I have to let Stephanie get at least one of these questions wrong. In what year did the Backstreet Boys first tour in the UK?
I'm gonna go with 95.
Okay,
Close.
close enough. It was 1996, but again,
Okay.
it's such a. I guess it's a useless question, but it is trivia.
I will remember that now forever, though. So
Yeah.
I never get asked that question again.
And I have just 3 more questions for you. Question number 5: which state did the group form in?
Florida.
Florida. Yeah, that is correct. Wow. Question number 6: there is a little audio button if you want to play it.
You know, can I just also tell you that "Show Me the Meaning of Being Lonely" is one of my least favorite Backstreet Boys songs.
Really? Well, that's a little bit disappointing.
But hold on.
I was going to say the complete opposite. I was like,
Really?
I was listening to the song. Well, to be fair, I don't know all their tracks like you do. But
Okay.
I was listening to the song and I was thinking, wow, this is a really good song. It's actually on my favorites playlist. I was playing it as I was driving to this location over here.
It's a good song. It's kind of sad.
Are you able to listen to it?
Yeah. It's As It Never Ends is what should be next.
Yeah, As It Never Ends.
Yeah.
But it's a great song. I do like it a lot, and I'm going to listen to this track right after this. I do have one final question for you. This is a bonus over here. So this is a picture that I found of you on Instagram.
Yes.
So I know you're a huge fan of this. So what day is this observed every year on? It's an official national holiday, apparently.
Is it?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it an official national holiday, but it is by Hershey's. And people do celebrate it. In fact, they had 40,000 petitions to make this a national holiday observance day. This is how popular this candy is over here.
Wow. I'm gonna go with May 18th.
Yeah, and you would be correct.
Is it?
It is May 8th.
I'm a good guesser today. I should go play the lottery or something.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. It was really great getting to know you more as a person, but of course also your deep expertise in just helping other teachers in IEP. I congratulate you on running a really awesome business at Mrs. D's Corner and of course your subscription-based model businesses. I congratulate you also on your upcoming book that is yet to be announced. You have a lot of exciting things going on for you. Thank you so much for your time in sitting down today with me and spending almost an hour actually with me today. So I really, really appreciate it. And I imagine our followers will appreciate your advice also, just like the amazing advices you've shared on the self-help books as well.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Of course. Thank you.